Hello to all our viewers and welcome to yet another edition of Roots Talk, a flagship podcast series produced by Hello Meghalaya and supported by the government of Meghalaya. My guest this episode is a professor at the Department of Cultural and Creative Studies, Northeastern University here in Shillong. He is an eminent Khasi folklorist, poet, storyteller and teacher and has compiled, collected and edited folk narratives and folk songs in Northeast India for over 30 years. His poetry is sensitized deeply by his love for folk tradition, the oracles of the past, and oral traditions. An associate member of the Folk Fellows instituted by the Finnish Academy of Science and Letters, he served on the executive board of the Believed Narrative Network of the International Society for Folk Narrative Research from 2011 to 2021. He has also held teaching positions as visiting fellow and professor at universities in India and abroad. I'm talking about the leading voice in Indian folklore, Professor Desmond Leslie Kharmawphlang. Desmond, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, take me back to your childhood days. We understand that you spent most of your early days both in Assam and Meghalaya. Could you give us a little bit of context?
Okay, I was born in 1964. It was a long time back. And I grew up at Lajongkra. My father served in the Assam Civil Service. He was part of the Assam Civil Service of Undivided Assam then. And he got postings in several places of Undivided Assam. One of the first ones being in Upper Assam, so in a very small town, I still remember, called Gilamara. So that was where he was posted. And during holidays, I remember my elder sister and me would travel to that very small township, and we would spend the entire winter vacations there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, when school started, we would come back because we pursued our studies in Shillong.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, which of the two places that you identify yourself most in terms of your personality? Would it be Assam or Meghalaya?
It would be Meghalaya,
Mhm.
naturally, yes. But then I still have very graphic memories about the boyhood spent there,
Mhm.
and this has been reflective also in some of my work.
What are some of those memories, if you don't mind sharing them with us?
I remember, trips that we made with my parents and my eldest sister to the Subansiri River, which still marks the borders between Arunachal Pradesh and Assam.
Mhm.
So I still remember those trips. I remember trips that we used to do in patches of wilderness surrounding that place, and getting to see some of the wildlife there. And something which struck me particularly was for the first time seeing a flight of wild ducks.
Okay.
That was something that was very remarkable,
Mhm.
And as a boy, looking at the flight of wild ducks as they burst out of foliage, and seeing the ducks flying across the sky, that was something very very unique.
Mhm. How
Yeah.
old were you then at that time?
Probably I was 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and all those memories were clipped, obviously, because you had to come back to Shillong because you were studying here.
Um,
All that
yeah,
fun.
I mean, there was a disconnect at some point of time, but it has been, it has been established even by neurology and neurological sciences that memories that were engendered in childhood, they
Mhm.
stay on, for a long time, and sometimes they have this way of coming back as recollections. So perhaps this is an experience that everyone undergoes.
And you still treasure them up to this very second.
Yes, indeed. As of course the boyhood memories that I spent in Shillong at Lajamkra.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And what were you studying here in Shillong? Let's start with your school.
Yeah, I studied at Sinatnis High School.
Okay.
Yeah, matriculated in a very turbulent period, 1980, when we had, uh, you know, uh, for the first time, I think the people of Shillong experienced curfew. So there was public disorder
Hmm.
and so on, and especially examinations had to be cancelled, or they were postponed, or some such thing happened. But
Yeah.
uh, we did our matriculation under very trying circumstances, because we were not we we because of the curfew, classes were suspended,
Yeah.
so we had to do our own preparation
Hmm.
at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
And and why was there curfew at that point in time? Tell us a little bit.
uh,
I
this
want to hear the issues because
yeah
you know
this
if I'm trying to connect the dots. If those same issues are the same issues that we're facing now, you know what I'm saying?
the trouble of that time has come to be known historically as the 79 issue, because it was in the year 1979 that issues of foreigners infiltration and alien incursion into Meghalaya
Mm.
became very, very, very prominent, and this was not unique to Meghalaya, because actually the entire movement was spearheaded by the All Assam Students Union, and that movement spilled over to many states. And since Assam is our neighbor,
Hmm.
it was very easy for the very influential Khasi Students Union to be also to be involved in that. I think they were partners with the
Right.
ASU, and
Mm.
there were many other students organizations of different states that came together and formed some kind of a united front. So we were still very young, and it was very difficult to sort of take in all that. We
Yeah.
were trying to understand the full implications of the movement, uh, and and somehow, we, being students, we were caught up in that,
Right.
because student life was basically and fundamentally affected greatly.
So after we'll get back to your school days. So after school, you went to St. Edmunds. Am I correct? St. Edmunds. And
Yes,
what did you
yes.
study there? What subject did you
Uh,
study there?
I I studied arts. I
Okay.
studied literature. I um, did my English honors,
Mm.
and then went on to do my masters at Nehu, and PhD at Nehu. Yeah, and I also had the opportunity to have training in folkloristics, and that happened in Switzerland.
Okay.
So, uh, so from teaching literature, I deviated to folklore and cultural studies.
Interesting. So let me ask you a question. So when you were growing up, um, have you all is folklore something that you've always been interested in? Is this something that you want to take up as a profession, or did it come gradually?
I I've always had this abiding, you know, mm, affection for folklore, because I practically grew up in the lap of my grandmother. Uh, she was completely illiterate. Okay. And one of the things, there are a few things that I would like to, talk about her. First is her insistence that in the house we only use the Milliam dialect of the Khasi language. That was something that she was very, very insistent about.
Mm.
Until today,
Mm.
at home, with my mother,
Mm.
I still use the Malayan dialect of our language, because that was something that my grandmother insisted upon
Mm.
even before she passed away.
Not the Sora dialect.
Not the Sora
Okay.
dialect.
Mm.
I mean, not that she had any problems with the
Mm.
Sora dialect, but
Mm.
she realized that, um, these dialects of a given language, would finally disappear, would become threatened, and they would finally disappear, as it's happening now. Okay, so and I'm glad for it, because it has managed to not only sustain but also to sharpen my sense of awareness about my own roots. That is one. And the other thing is the songs and the proverbs and the aphorisms that she was always in the habit of sharing, while she was giving me and my sisters a bath, or, feeding us and so on.
Mm.
So these are things that I grew up with, and it's really interesting because these are the very examples of the body of folklore material that increasingly I'm finding very relevant, and I apply, those examples of oral literature in my writings.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about folklore in detail, obviously, but for now, after your college, you did your PhD as well from
Yeah,
Nehu, you said, and
that's
then you went on to teach at Right Laban. Am I correct?
yes. That was my first
Was that your first job?
Well, actually, I did part-time jobs at All India Radio as well,
Mm-hmm.
and Apira newspaper, when
Okay.
Apira was still around at
Mm-hmm.
that point of time.
Mm.
But my first regular job was, yes, as a lecturer at Rai Laban College, which I tremendously enjoyed because it was a night college. It was an evening college then,
Mm.
and I used to enjoy the evening classes. Then after the classes, walk back from Rai Laban,
Mm.
using the for those who are familiar with the topography of Laban would know the Jumor Lane.
Mm.
So I used to pass by the Jumor Lane, cross the bridge, and come to Pine Mound Hill, Pine Mound Ridge, and then walk all the way to Limekra. Um, that was a very memorable experience, and for which I still have very delightful memories. So I taught at Rai Laban for 8 months, and and then there were advertisements for teaching positions at Nehu, uh, and I applied for a lecturership at the Center for Creative Arts. Our department was called the Center for Creative Arts. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a teaching department as such; it was a research department.
And then,
Then, yeah, then, and I applied for the job, and I was appointed as a lecturer in
mm.
1988, and uh, I worked there, in this in this center, doing research and conducting research, and
Mm-hmm.
that also enabled me to devote attention to you
Your
know
work.
my own work. Yeah. uh, the Center for Creative Arts later got amalgamated with another center that was at Nehu then. It was called the Center for Literary and Cultural Studies. So there was this amalgamation that took
Mm.
place between these two centers, and we became the Center for Cultural and Creative Studies.
Right.
In 2002, I got the opportunity to teach at Western Oregon University in the US. By then, I had obtained my PhD, and I was invited by the IIE, that is the International Institute of Education.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught at Western Oregon University and Portland University in the US, in the
In
state of
2002.
that
Okay.
was in 2002.
Mm.
And it was there that I decided that I should really put in efforts to establish a full-fledged department of folklore, because I was teaching folklore in these two universities in the US, although I was attached to the English department, because the English
Yeah.
department in American universities have very strong components of folklore. because they deal with Native American literatures and so on. And so after I came back from there, I worked on formulating the syllabus for folklore, and the department started in 2009.
Okay.
So now we're offering full-fledged master's and PhD program
All right.
in folklore.
So, what was it like becoming a professor at Nehu for the first time? Did you think it was a big deal?
Uh, yeah, when I joined, I joined as lecturer. Now the position of lecturer does not exist anymore. Now lecturers are called assistant professors.
Mm.
So it was very exciting. It was very enabling also, and it gave me a very different perspective about academics, because I realized that being a part of the university system, you really have to, um, you know, you have to publish, you have to participate in academic events,
Mhm.
you have to uh, take part in seminars and symposia and so on. So I welcomed, every opportunity that was offered to me, and so it was. I I'm very much convinced that it was being part of the Nehu faculty that sort of enabled me also to not only contribute to folklore studies, but also to have been able to participate in many academic
Mhm.
events, in the country and abroad. So uh, Nehu also gave me the opportunity to participate um, in a very significant summer school,
Mhm.
which is specially dedicated, which is one of a kind. It's dedicated to folklore. It's called the folklore summer school, which is run by the Kalevala Institute, which is part of the University of Helsinki in Finland. So I think must be one of
Mhm.
the first from the Northeast to have been able to take part in that. And as a part of that program, I got inducted as a folk fellow of the Finnish Academy of Science and Letters.
Mhm.
Yeah, which
Right.
which was instituted by the Finnish government. Yeah, so this you know provided me with the opportunity to become part of a very select group of folklorists, from different parts of the world. There may be perhaps 180 or
That's it.
190. That's it. So it's a very exclusive group.
Okay.
Mm.
So, till now, how many PhD scholars have you produced so far?
Um, I think I've produced about 16
One
PhD
six.
scholars. 1 6,
Okay.
yeah, 1 6,
Mhm.
1 6, and I'm supervising 3 more.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting. So, before we dive into the technicalities of
yeah.
folklore and what you do best, Professor Desmond, for the benefit of our viewers, what is folklore in the simplest of terms, and what do folklorists do?
Um, Folklore has a very interesting history. You see, um, actually, the word folklore was coined only in 1846. Okay, the word folklore did not exist in the English lexicon, in English dictionaries and encyclopedias.
Mm.
It was coined by um, um, a scholar whose name was William John Thoms. So William John Thoms was an antiquarian
Mm.
uh, by passion, although he was employed as the deputy librarian in the House of Lords. Okay, uh, so in his free time, he collected folklore material which he thought needed collection, needed documentation, because he saw that these examples of folklore were slowly getting obliterated, were vanishing, were threatened, and were, falling into complete disuse. You see, we are talking about a time when the Industrial Revolution was sweeping Europe, especially England and Western Europe, and it was the transformation that the Industrial Revolution brought to human civilization
Mm.
was very, very theatrical, was very dramatic, was very radical, was life changing,
Mm.
life transforming. And in the backdrop of this great transformation, many of these things that we are used to, for instance, the use of aphorisms, the use of metaphors, the use of proverbs. In fact, he directed his attention to documenting, first of all, so-called superstitions, so-called um, proverbs and aphorisms and examples that he saw that were being used, that were being applied
Mm.
by people in rural places, in rural areas. You see, he was very much obsessed with the peasantry.
I
You
like
see,
the word obsessed. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
he was obsessed with the peasantry because he encountered peasants, English peasants, okay, and he saw that although they were English people, right, owing allegiance to the same country, to the
Mhm.
same nation, yet they were very different from each other. I mean, he could hardly understand what they were speaking when they attempted to communicate with him, and so on. And the kind of the lifestyles that he saw that they practiced, okay, were also very different from the one that he was used to.
Right.
Okay, so he made this very, very impassioned plea to scholars, uh, and he, uh, you know, told them that if we do not collect this lore, which means oral, unwritten knowledge, if we do not collect the lore, then we'll be losing a great deal of
Yeah.
knowledge. Okay, because the knowledge that was sustained by the peasantry
Mm.
was literally in the oral tradition, because the peasantry did not have access to education, to literacy,
Mm.
so or they sustained their knowledge system through the oral tradition. And this was something that caught his attention, and he formed, in fact, the English Folklore Society, in order to, do this very, very important task. And his followers did an amazing job of collecting, the oral tradition of the peasantry
Mm.
in England. Yeah,
So let me interpret that correctly. So folklorists in general would collect, compile, edit probably
yeah.
all your narrative. I mean, your folk narrative and folk songs. Am I correct?
Yes, we go by. I think we follow the principle of identifying first.
Okay.
First, you have to identify what
Right.
is folklore,
Right.
right? And then you document,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which means you collect. And now we have moved to another stage, which is analysis. Analysis. So for a very long time, folklore meant only collection. Okay,
Right.
folklore meant only collection. And for this reason, folklore material was used by scholars coming from various disciplines. Historians
Mm-hmm.
use folklore, literary scholars use
Mm.
folklore, anthropologists use folklore, sociologists use folklore, right? Mm, Philosophers also occasionally use folklore. So this material was already there, And this led William Thoms and his followers
Mm.
and many other scholars in different parts of in the different countries of Europe to seriously contemplate this body of material that has been collected, and to decide that, effort should be made, impetus should be given to the academic study of this material.
Okay.
I mean, why do we,
Mm.
why should this material be studied only by ethnologists, by anthropologists, by sociologists, by literary scholars, and so on?
Mm.
So folklorists also should study this body of material and carve out a discipline of their own. So this is how folkloristics started as an academic discipline.
So it's interesting because I already have a question on that. Because you see, you said in addition to collecting and documenting stories and songs, uh, now we see there's this encouragement where we need to analyze those stories and songs as well.
Correct.
Why to incorporate, that portion? Why analyzation is important here?
Let me give you an example. Let's take the example of a riddle. Okay. Now, a riddle is something which is very interesting. In
Mm.
Khasi, we call riddle jinkantip.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
But if you look at a riddle very closely, you will find that it is a beautiful genre which operates on many planes. Okay. It is metaphorical, it is artistic, it is creative. It actually compels one to think. See, when somebody asks you a riddle, you think,
You're
right?
right. Yeah.
And therefore, folklorists have actually established that perhaps the riddle is the earliest or the most ancient example of folklore, because people, even in very, very ancient times, people in primordial times, were asking questions about
Mm.
things around,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So, uh, so, um, so this is something that you also see manifested in the kind of ritual games that children engage in. I've grown up, I've had lots of experiences growing up, and also as part of my work, living in villages, in rural places, and I see that children in rural areas, they engage a lot in quizzing, in riddling, in asking questions about things, and this sharpens actually their intellect. It makes
Mm.
people think,
Mhm.
because a riddle might strike you as something very simplistic, but it is not. It is not, you know. So this is one way that a riddle becomes useful, and therefore you need actually to analyze how a riddle becomes a pedagogical tool.
Okay.
How you can use it for pedagogy.
You mean to decode what they mean
Yeah,
and what they symbolize?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. See, because it has a lot to do with with your cognitive power. Okay, with your cognitive power. Similarly, a proverb also functions. And you see, when parents caution their children about something, the
Mm.
most effective way is to use a proverb. For instance, in Khasi, when grandmother used that quite a lot on me and my siblings. Whenever we would make, or we would be prepared to make a rash decision to do something uh, without really introspecting the consequences, she would say, "What bamjakluj?" Okay, it doesn't mean that I'm about to have a meal, but it means that think about the consequences of the action that you're contemplating, because you might hurt yourself, because when you eat hot rice, then your mouth gets burnt, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So, and now this is didactic because it offers a moral lesson. It's it's very interesting because you find parallels of this in different languages. For instance, the English equivalent of that is "look before you leap." It's not that somebody is about to jump off a building, but you use that proverb to tell somebody, please think carefully about what
You're right. Yeah.
you're about to do. Look before you leap.
Hmm.
So in this way, proverbs and riddles, although we may think about them as being juvenile, yet they are so very significant. I mean, the Bible has a complete chapter on Proverbs. The Buddhist text, the Dhammapada, is all about Proverbs. See, the Quran is also full of Proverbs and so on. So you see, it's not only universal,
Mm.
but it is embedded very deeply in civilizational behavior and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
But Desmond, since you're here, help us understand the difference between, because of trying to search online and speak to friends who are into translating Khasi to English, English to Khasi, you name it. What's the difference between Kikhanatang and Khanapateng? Is there a difference between Puruskam and Khanapateng and all of that?
Yeah,
What's the
absolutely.
difference?
No, I'm glad you're asking this question because uh, the Khasi language has very clear uh, definitions, to offer for these different genres of folk literature. Khanatang is myth. You see, it's
Okay.
if you look at the etymological construction of the word Khanatang, it means Khana, a story,
Mm.
which is Kantang. It's sacred. Okay, which means Khanatang are narratives that are associated with a belief system or belief systems.
Okay.
Okay, for
Like
instance, the
Usop Edbening?
Sopet Beneng is a
Okay.
wonderful, is a magnificent example
Got it.
of Khanatang. It is a myth.
Mm.
Okay, by saying it is a myth, it does not mean that it is untrue or it is fanciful and it is made
That's right,
up.
because it's part of our DNA now. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we distinguish the Sopet Beneng Khanatang with the Manik Raitong Khanapateng, because Manik Raitong is a legend.
Okay.
Okay, or
Mm.
the legend of Kalikai. See, so a legend is a quasi historical account. Sometimes it is a historicized account. For instance, we know that Manik Raitong lived at one point of historical time, right? We know that Manik Raitong was an individual who had this affair with the the wife of this aim and so on and so forth. Because we actually know where he lived.
Mm.
We know I have been to the place where where he was made to jump into that ring of fire.
So what you're trying to tell us that it's not a myth.
It's not, no, it's a legend, which means it is a true story. There may be some exaggeration, there may be some distortion here and there, but fundamentally, the story is true. Kalikai is the same. Kalikai is a story that happened. I mean, forget about the macabre element of it, but it is a story that actually is based on a true account. That dreadful and that, ghastly uh, incident
Mm.
happened, but we don't actually know when it happened. But we do know for a fact that it happened, and this is also established by the fact that Kalikai was an inhabitant of Rangjerte.
Mm.
So there are all these evidence to support the actual existence of.
Are there any evidence to support Sopekneng? Because that's where we trace our origin, I would imagine, right?
Right,
Is,
right.
is there evidence in there?
The
Documented.
Yes, yes. You see, in 2014, I was part of an archaeological excavation that took place on top of Sopet Beneng. This excavation was supported by Nehu, and we had a team of people working on the project. We had Professor Marco Mitri, an archaeologist. We had several other. We had Professor Hyambok Semle,
Mm.
geomorphologist. We had 3 or 4 historians. We had a climatologist. We had together, we brought together this team of people uh, that worked on the summit of Soviet Benang for about 7 months.
Okay.
And after working at this site, we were able to um, excavate, because it was largely an excavation exercise. We were able to excavate a site that proved the existence of a very, very ancient settlement on top of Soviet Benang, which dates to circa 1226 BC.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
The evidence is there. The report has been published, and the report has also been published in international journals. So this finding, as it were, uh, has been corroborated by the evidence that we collected the uh, from the from the site in terms of cultural material, in terms of material culture, such as potsherds, such as stone implements, and also food samples, grains that we found, adhering to potsherds. So we got all this. We got charcoal evidence also,
Mm.
which we sent. This entire package in very small segments was sent to a beta carbon dating laboratory in Miami, and the report came back after 5 months, and the report stated that corroborated the fact that this was really a very ancient settlement, uh, which uh, which survived,
Mm.
And the material culture that was produced there, belonged to that period. So it is now proven that this probably is one of the most ancient sites. I'm not saying the most,
Mhm.
one of the most ancient sites in this part of the world.
So that's what I mean. People watching this right now, I don't want them to think that this is all superstition. Kata rajing it be. So it's not superstition at all.
No, it's not. You see, what led us to undertake this work, this excavation, uh, was in fact influenced by several factors. As a folklorist, I have collected very interesting accounts from the vicinity of Soviet Benang. You know, the villages surrounding the Soviet Benang. Um, Simultaneously, people from that area came to meet us, especially came to meet Marco Mitri, who was then teaching at UCC College, Union Christian College. They used to meet him and show him, samples that they collected. These samples were strewn all over. And these samples, it was very clear that these samples were man made. Okay.
Okay.
These samples were stone implements. Okay. Which have been, which were sharpened. It's very clear to see that these were actually manufactured items, manufactured objects with very clear purposes.
Mhm.
They were manufactured for the purpose of digging.
Mhm.
They were manufactured for the purpose of foraging for food, and so on and so forth. And Marco, being the archaeologist that he is, uh, um, you know, sort of met me and a few other people, and we
Mm.
decided that we should apply for funding to undertake this work, so that so that the the supporting evidence that we had collected, for instance, the narratives, the stone implements, and so on, would all be brought together and 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 uh, and s- and to see, what would the results of this work be.
Mm.
So and this has not happened only here. I mean, this has happened in several other places, and the most celebrated example would be Hisarlik. Hisarlik, which is in modern day Turkey, has been established to be the site of ancient Troy. Troy. Okay. Now, for a very long time, people thought that the Trojan War and so on and so forth were part of mythological narrative. Okay. But it was Schliemann. Schliemann was an industrialist, but he also had great interest in archaeology.
Mm.
And being an industrialist, he was a millionaire even at that point of time. I'm talking about the early part of the 20th century. So sponsored he sponsored um, an archaeological excavation to be conducted at Hisarlik, because all the evidence of the Trojan War pointed to that particular site. So through his through his guidance and through the energy that he devoted to that work, now it is clearly established that
Right.
Troy, or rather the ancient site of the so-called mythological Troy, is actually in Hisarlik, which is in modern day Turkey now. Yeah, and as you know, we will have a read. There's already a film that will be based on. I mean, we've had Troy,
Yeah.
the movie, but now there's another movie that's coming up, which will talk about the Iliad, which will talk about basically Troy.
Okay.
Yeah, which will clearly establish it as a, if not historical, at least a historicized account.
Nice. So coming back to the region, would you consider Khasi community, Kajat Banreo, as the oldest civilization, let's say, in the Northeast? Is there a documented fact?
Yeah, it is not me. This has been clearly established by ethnologists, by anthropologists who have worked in this part of the world. Uh, the Khasis belong to one of the first, I'm using the word races with great reservation here because we don't talk about race anymore. First races to have inhabited the Northeast. And this is clearly established. This is clearly established. And the archaeological excavation that we conducted on Sobat Beneng is one proof that we have.
So, Desmond, you have been collecting stories and songs for a very long time, and this would be mostly from remote areas.
Yeah.
Now, how would you use all of these stories and songs to, understand the larger, wider, and complex nature of what Khasi identity is all about?
Um, there is a book, one of my very first books, which I was commissioned to write by Sahitya Academy. It's a collection called Khasi Tales and Songs, Khasi Folk Tales and Songs. It is the result of very extensive work that I did in the Bhoi area, Bhoi and Panar area mostly. And it was an experience which taught me that despite the veneer of so-called modernity, despite the veneer of so-called civilization, you need only to dig a little, scratch the surface a little bit, and you'll find a completely different realm altogether that's lying under that veneer of so-called sophistication. Okay, when I use the word sophistication, I do not, I do not use it in contrast to the universe of our rural areas, because I find sophistication in those songs. Okay, let me give you an example of a genre or subgenre of Khasi folk songs that I have collected from very remote parts of Ribhoi. These songs are called Krot Ksing songs. Krot Ksing songs. Krot Ksing songs, which literally would mean plowing with drums. Okay, plowing with drums. And this is something that I've been following for so many years now in these very remote places where agricultural operations is conducted through the use of music and songs. Okay, so what you have is a group of agricultural workers who will be engaged in hill rice cultivation, and they would start the work from the bottom of a hill because it's hill rise. And they would begin very early in the morning, perhaps at the break of dawn when the sun is, still tolerable, especially in the Boy area.
Mhm.
So they would be armed with the traditional mokyo and so on and so forth. But a very important part of that team, that group, would be the drummer, Boshok Singh, who would also double up as a singer. So
Okay.
he would have to be qualified both as a singer as well as a drummer. And I have documented, the contributions made by so many of them, a host of these artists, And in the last 5 years, I've been working with Wen Siem. He's one of the most accomplished singers as well as drummers. So he would play the drum and sing,
Mm.
and the workers would also begin to work, wielding their mokyo, which they call maku in those parts.
Mhm.
So while he provides the verses,
Mm.
they would join in the chorus, which is called kalanghoi. Okay, so it has to be seen, to be understood how this works, and the rhythm that he creates with his drums will provide also the rhythm for the people to work. So they work in tandem, they work in
Nice.
unison, and the added attraction to this is the sound of the mokyo, hitting the soil, which again creates that ambience of perfect timing, perfect music, And I have collected hundreds of these songs, of these Kroot songs, and they are so beautiful because they talk about the surroundings.
Mhm.
They talk about the lives of the people in the village. They talk about personalities in the village.
Correct.
They are fun songs because sometimes they do caricatures of certain personalities in the village because it's a fun-filled kind of an experience, and old people, children, and mostly young people join in this.
Nice.
So this goes on throughout the day. They would, of course, have breaks in between where where rice beer would be consumed,
Mhm.
to slake their thirst and so on. Rice beer is a very integral part of all that, and they would go on working till they finish the job on top of the hill,
Right.
and they finish it off also in a circle, which actually has a very important religious implication, because I'm told that just 20 years back there would be a ritual that people would perform at the end of that plowing, and nowadays, of course, the ritual does not
Mm.
take place. I have not seen, except for token
Mm.
kind of ritual performance that the people do. But but the song and the performance aspect is still very much there.
This is pretty interesting. So, when you talk about your research, is
Yeah.
it only concentrated in the Bhoi area?
No, I have worked in the Boy area largely, but I've also worked in Parar area and
Okay.
also a little bit in the Langam area.
Okay.
And what is interesting about this Kroot Singh's song tradition is that there are also stories that are associated, with the songs. I mean, the song could actually have an origin in an account, in an episode, in a small narrative, in in a small account that may be exchanged only within a family's
Right.
circle, but it becomes a song, and something which has really struck me about the Kroot Singh songs is the fact that the songs are very rooted. The songs are very symbiotic. They are rooted to the soil.
Mm.
And in fact, the people there believe that when the first rice stalks start sprouting from the soil, then that is meant for the monkey, the porcupine, the hill rat, and the wild boar. It's only after these animals have had their share,
Mhm.
then the produce becomes then the produce becomes the property of human beings for
Mhm.
consumption. So this is something very very remarkable, that there is this sense of of involving not only the human agency in this entire thing, but there's also this care, there's also this consideration, there's also this accounting for wildlife. Okay, something which is very
Yeah.
unique, and something which I have developed studying the Khasi concept of attributing personhood even to objects, even to non human things. Okay?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you said your research is not only in the Riboy area, but it's in Panar and other areas
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit some of the interventions, that is unique, and probably interventions that have captured your imagination. One or two at least.
By intervention, how do you mean?
Your, evidence, your findings, probably apart from the crude thing that you just talked about. Anything probably in the Panar area and the Langam area that you were talking about.
Okay, yeah. The Panar area or the Panar areas is very rich in Kanapating,
Mm.
in legends. And there is a reason for this. It is because largely the Panar area used to be part of Kahima Sutunga,
Mm.
or commonly called the Jaintia
Right, yep.
Kingdom. See, and the Jaintia Kingdom or the Hima Sutunga had actually chronicles.
Mm.
They had their own Buranjis. They had their own accounts. They had a written tradition. Okay,
Mhm.
they had a written tradition because records were being kept. Okay, and therefore it's very it's natural that many of the legends that abound the Panar area were chronicled, were written down, were recorded and documented by scribes in the Himasutunga courts,
Mhm.
and it's believed that many of them actually were non-Khasis. Many of them came from the plains.
Right.
Many of them were pundits and so on. But the fact that the fact that the tradition of the legend abounds in the Panar area is largely due to its
Mm.
historicity, the historicity of the Hima Sutunga. Yeah. It's very different in the Khasi hills. You see,
Of
here
course, yeah.
we have little of legends, we have more of myths, we have more of kiparom, kipaju, which means folk tales. We have more of those things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, Bart Desmond, you said in one of the interviews that I came across, and you said that folklore is sensitive. What do you mean by that?
Um, See, folklore is something. I think we began the discussion by talking about identity,
Yeah.
and the United Nations Educational and Social and Cultural Organization (UNESCO), with which I've been involved in some projects, uh, has actually identified folklore as one of the strongest means of identity um, mm, uh, creation and establishment. Okay,
Yeah.
this is very much part
Mm.
of the declaration that UNESCO made in 1989 uh, in its Paris sitting.
Mhm.
There was a sitting of the UNESCO which happened in Paris in the month of October in 1989, which of which I know about, where this declaration was made. Yeah, and this declaration became phenomenal because it sort of it became consequential for indigenous peoples in different parts of the world to use to mobilize and to deploy folklore for their own cultural identity assertions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So is it when you say sensitive, I think I would interpret it like this. For example, when you go and collect, these are all again information that people would not be comfortable. Have you encountered any of such challenges in terms of like, people are a little bit apprehensive in giving out too much information too soon?
Mm. Yeah. In folklore research, we follow a very strict regimen of research ethics. Okay, it is clearly laid out by, especially by the Folklore Society, the society which was, established by William Thoms.
Mhm.
And the Folklore Society, almost on an annual basis, prescribes a very rigid, a very sensitive, and a very careful set of ethics that folklorists should follow.
Yeah,
See, for instance, because we're dealing mostly with human subjects,
correct.
we are dealing mostly with sometimes very interesting and very sensitive and sometimes conflicting identities. Okay, so therefore, um when we deal with vulnerable, such vulnerable subjects, then one has to tread very carefully.
True.
Yeah. So uh, we in in our course we run a very very special program of sensitizing our students before they go to the field, especially our PhD scholars. They have to undergo a very rigorous training of research
Correct.
ethics and research
Because it's not
publication.
just mere reporting and
No,
coming
no,
back
no,
with
no,
facts and
absolutely
figures. You
not.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely not. And this is something that I have experienced firsthand. In especially in working with Native American uh, populations while in Oregon,
Mm.
and also in the Australian bush. Okay, I've also worked in the Australian bush. In 2018, I was awarded the Dyson Visiting Professorship at Melbourne University, and this gave me the opportunity to live with Aborigines, Australians, in a small town called Milton,
Mm.
in South Australia. And it is there that I have sharpened my sensitivity,
Correct.
how to work with vulnerable constituencies, especially indigenous peoples.
So fast forward to 2026, Professor. How relevant is folklore in the modern times?
Folklore is both phenomena as well as knowledge.
Mm.
It forms, it constructs our identity, but then it also articulates the kind of future that we see for ourselves. Earlier on, you spoke about perhaps younger people, who are not comfortable with what they are. They may have identity stress and so on and so forth, identity issues.
Mm.
I think this is true, but then I also do detect that there is a strong sense of interest among the young people in their own so-called roots, in their own ancestries, in their own backgrounds, and so on. And I have encounters with young people all the time, and many of them express, interest in their own roots and so on and so forth. Because um, I think the world is becoming much more complex,
Yeah.
for everyone, especially for young people, and therefore I see that there's this resurgence of interest in their, you know, in their past,
Yeah.
you know. So with um, being fully conscious about this fact, my colleagues and I, and also inspired by our university, that is Northeastern Hill University, we have formulated uh, a 4-year undergraduate program in folklore and cultural studies.
Nice, because that would be my next question. Because like folklore belongs to everybody, all right?
Exactly,
So
exactly.
how do you create consciousness? That is one way that you're
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah.
Okay.
So many colleges have expressed interest in offering this course, which has already been approved by the Academic Council.
Mhm.
So now students coming fresh out of school, can study folklore and cultural studies for 4 years, okay, and get to know about the things, get to know about their own traditions. Okay,
Mhm.
for instance, what do young kids now know about the market system? Kayokahan,
Mhm.
right? Uh, what do young kids now know about traditional administration? Okay. What do young kids now know about the systems of the traditional systems of reckoning? For instance, when you go to buy kwai, shikti, shikani, when you go and buy tumpo or betel leaf, shi tap, shi bia, and so on and so forth. Now, these systems of reckoning are still being used at Yodo. See, when you go to buy oranges,
Yeah.
shibar, and so on, right? So there has to be some sort of an information package
Mm.
that should be offered to young people now, so that they stay rooted. I'm not advocating for going back to the past. What I'm saying is that we should have a healthy respect for the past, so that we'll be able to deal
Right.
in a very meaningful way with our future.
So how important then is communication in an age where, we're all isolated and dating our cell phones? Let's say, how important is communication?
Well, if you're talking about the modern means of
Mm.
communication, then I think the young people now are using it to the maximum. They're taking full advantage of those things. And you see, folklore is not a fossilized phenomenon.
Mm.
Folklore now is being disseminated through the cell phone, right? I mean, the cell phone has made it possible for one subgenre of folklore to be created, and that is the riddle joke. Somebody sends you a riddle, asks you a question, and then provides the answer later on. It's very funny. It's a joke.
Can we
So
call it folklore of the internet?
that is folklore of the internet, completely.
Yeah.
Completely, yes. And that new genre or subgenre, which is called the riddle joke with a hyphen,
Mm.
is a creation of the cell phone. It never existed before, because it is possible to do that only through cell phones.
Right.
So you see, so technology does not destroy folklore. In fact, technology supports folklore. If you look at memes and other things that are being circulated, many of those things are actually based on folklore. If you look at media, for instance,
Mm.
right? Advertisements. Most advertisements are actually based on folklore material. Okay, I can mention a few. I mean, I think it was Adidas that promoted its products with this inversed proverb. Um, um, it's not coming to my mind right now, but yeah, the proverb: "Nothing is impossible,"
Mm.
right?
Mm.
But Adidas has reversed it: "Impossible is nothing." See, it is how you cleverly use, it is how you adroitly use folklore material to make it appealing, because folklore is always appealing. Okay, there's also another. I think it's an advertisement from Maggie, for instance. Maggie, the food that
Mm.
we eat. I mean, what food stuff can be prepared in 2 minutes? It's only something that comes out of fairy tales,
Mm.
right? When you have ready, red food which can be prepared and which is made ready within a span of 2 minutes. Okay, so Maggie also uses that, and there are so many others. In fashion and in personal grooming, also I've seen advertisements where there's a particular aftershave, I think, that uses, you know, Greek mythology, you know, of the youth who falls in love with himself.
Mm.
You know who I'm talking about? Well, it's I think it's from Versace or some such brand that uses, you know, folklore
Mm.
material a lot. Okay, um, yeah. So this is
So that's
how.
urban folklore then. Can we say it?
Well, it can be classified as urban folklore,
Mm.
but it uses a very ancient prototype. See, it
Okay.
uses a very ancient
Yeah.
prototype.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Desmond, apart from folklore, you're also an avid poet and contemporary social concerns of Meghalaya, the cultural past, and these are the subjects, and of course, the environment that you've touched and dwell upon.
Mm.
Now, a subject like the environment is done to death, but how do you take a subject like the environment, which, like I said, is very familiar? How do you take it and make it your own and make it relevant as a poet?
Uh, I think the sensitivity that I have developed for nature, for the environment, the ecological concerns that I have developed, all stem from folklore. Because it is only when you interact with folklore material and the folklore universe, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that you actually begin to appreciate the environment. For instance, the Krot Singh songs that I spoke about.
Yeah.
For instance,
Mm.
my experiences with the tradition of the sacred forest or Kilaukantang, you know, which I've had in the Boy area, having actually collected and documented stories about destruction of certain sacred forests and how people are trying to reanimate and rejuvenate those. So those have all come from the cycles of stories, narratives, and songs that I have collected. You know,
Yeah.
I was able to work with a village community that was trying to rejuvenate and reanimate the very sacred forest that their ancestors had
Wow.
destroyed.
Yeah.
And I came to know about that through songs. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the songs that I collected spoke about that particular Laukantang in the Thayang village cluster. Uh, and and when I made inquiries about that forest, they said, no, it's finished. It's no more. The trees that were mentioned in the stories are no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
But this led me to discover that that the forest is still very much a part of the collective memory of the people there. They still sing songs about that forest, and I was able in that way to harness, you know, their emotional attachment to the sacred forest that their ancestors had
Mm-hmm.
destroyed, which they expressed through songs, to harness into an action
Right.
that led to the rejuvenation of that forest, which happened in 1997.
Mm-hmm. So till now, how many collection of poems have you published in both English and Khasi?
Um, yeah, my first book of collected poems was published in, I think, 1987. It's simply called Touchstone.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bilingual kind of a work
Mm.
which has the English as well as Khasi translation done by the late Professor Bevan elsewhere.
Okay.
Then the second collection is called Here, and I'm working on my third collection
Okay.
now. Although many of my poems have been published in anthologies in different parts of the world. In fact, one poem is part of the syllabus in the third semester of Delhi University currently. Manipur University also uses one of my poems as a reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what will you read for us today? And before you do that, give us a little bit of context to what you're going to be reading. Probably, let's say, a favorite of yours.
Okay. I think I will read something which I wrote about my grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah, um, which tries to explain what I had said earlier about her, and uh, the kind of lore, the unwritten knowledge which I picked up, from her lips. So, uh, I've thought a lot uh, about the songs uh, that she used to sing. I mean, there's this song um, about Aap John Thung Saru Ka Miao Kuk
Mm.
So, about, I mean, that's such a beautiful song. And she used to sing that when she planted maize in the backyard of our small house at Laimkra.
Mm.
Uh, and it has a direct connection with the action of planting maize, and the song also talks about planting maize and how we should be thankful to the cat and the dog, because whenever we see the formation of clouds in a very special way, like when you see the sky filled with clouds resembling cotton tufts, especially this kind of sky is obtained usually in the month of October,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know and that is when you say, oh, Thung Saru Ka Miao Kuk So, and all that, and how that song, which is still being sung actually by children in villages, how that is directly connected to the work the labor that she was doing. So those are the connections that I see as being very, very symbiotic, very, very relevant, and very it's part of it was part of my growing up,
Mm.
and so it's very tangible.
All right. The mic is yours, Professor.
So this is entitled Between Lips. Passing between lips, an ancestry reminiscent of the chewed betel nut grandmother transmitted from recesses of a stained tooth onto palm of an unlettered hand, and again to my mouth. Many years later, I found myself teaching tradition handed down by word of mouth. A cane basket we put our socks in was stuffed with her stories. It suddenly became a nest, and I flew with unknown birds, giddy and half asleep, seeking blankets of cloud in the maize field of the mythical cat who sometimes plowed the sky. The cane basket disappeared when a wooden cabinet took up residence in our 3-room house. Socks found a nest, and I began writing the first few letters of the alphabet. Mlim, where my ancestors prayed for their deliverance from bitter winter, where they wrestled with earth and stone to script remembrances. Today, lost and approaching 60, surrounded and imprisoned by books, I sometimes murmur a prayer. Grandmother, tell me another story.
Wow, Professor, is there anything that you cannot do? You know what? I could listen to you all day if I had my way, but I wanted to ask you a question. So, what feeling do you want someone to carry if they were to spend time with you?
Um, Maybe you might have to qualify that question with something much more. Yeah.
All right. So now I have a question for you before we jump into our next segment. For now, Khasi holds the full official language status here in the state.
In the state,
Yeah,
yes.
alongside
Garo.
English and Garo,
Garo,
of course.
yes.
Now, do you see this as a step forward, a push to lobby the central government to, include the Khasi language in the eighth schedule to the Indian Constitution?
Yes, it is a very positive thing. It is something that, as a member of the Khasi Author Society, I've also been involved in advocating and promoting for the inclusion of the Khasi language, because we have a very long history of scholarship in the language and the literature.
Yeah.
You see, Khasi language was read at the University of Calcutta, and subsequently it was accepted as a subject where you can pursue full-fledged master's program and PhD at NEHU.
Mm.
Uh, the the history of written literature, of the Khasi community is also very rich and very varied. Okay, so we have some of the finest examples of drama,
Mhm.
of poetry, and fiction. And this is something that one cannot ignore, because a literary tradition is best tested by the cultural production, that testifies the wealth of that language and the wealth of that literature. And the fact that translations also exist,
Mhm.
of many works of Khasi literature, shows that the dissemination of Khasi literature has been and is very wide. So it is a very, very legitimate demand, and everybody should support it.
All right, fair enough. So your latest engagement, Professor, is you're heading to England to deliver a seminar on some of the researches you've done.
Yes, I've been invited to deliver two lectures. One at the University of Loughborough
Mm-hmm.
in England, in Leicester, in England, and another one at the University of Sussex in Brighton,
Mm-hmm.
England. So the first lecture is on 14th of this month, where I will be talking about the lesser known aspects of the living root bridges. I have worked very closely with the people of Nongbalai, a village in the precipices of the Riwar area, and I would like to talk about this work. I mean, I will stay away from the run-of-the-mill
Mm-hmm.
information and data that we have about the living root bridges. I would stick more to the artistic. I would stick more to the to the lesser known dimensions and aspects of the living root bridges. And therefore, I have titled this lecture, um, Tales That Trees Tell. So I'm looking at the lesser known perspective of how trees,
Mm-hmm.
especially trees that make up the living root bridges, they are attributed personhood. They are attributed their own identities. They are named. They are looked upon as living, which they are,
Yeah.
which they are. But but the kind of identity that they are given is so profoundly created, through the cycles of exchanges that take place between these trees and the community that supports them,
Mm-hmm.
and the community that nourishes them, and the community that loves them.
Okay.
So there is this very special relationship that's shared between these trees and the community.
And this would be the first time that you'd be talking about all of this to
Yes.
like the research in particular.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So, and this is part of the UNESCO sponsored lecture, which is happening at Loughborough, because Loughborough University is being supported by UNESCO for. They have a very interesting program called Masters in Storytelling. Masters in Storytelling, and as part of that, my latest work, which is also here, is included in a book that talks about the methodologies of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So this was published only in March this year,
All right.
and it was published by Routledge.
Mm-hmm.
So this work, which I've just cited, will also be part of this lecture series, which is supported by UNESCO. The lecture at Sussex University will revolve around the experiences I've had with a particular sacred forest in the Bohoi area, the forest which got destroyed at about the time I was born, during mid 1970s, 60s, sorry, and how the people were moved with remorse in order to, and how they were galvanized into this collective action of trying to reanimate it once again.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that, of course, will remind us that the relationship that we have with our sacred forest is not so simple. I mean, of course, we
Yeah.
have these beautiful examples of that we have at Kharmawphlang and several other places. In all, there may be a little over 400 of these sacred forests in different parts of Khasi Giant Hills. Some very pristine, others partially damaged, while others have been completely destroyed. So the kind of relationship that we have, the Khasis have with the sacred forest, is very ambivalent. So I'm not going to talk about the glorification that we have about
Yeah.
the sacred forest, because we have also destroyed the sacred
Correct.
forest. The mythological narrative that talks about the destruction of Udingye is actually
Mm.
about the destruction of sacred
Yeah.
forest, and that's very ancient. So it's not that we have preserved sacred forests, but we have had this very ambivalent, very contested kind of relationship with sacred forests. Therefore, this talk at Sussex University is entitled "The Forest Forgives." The forest forgives.
Oh. Well, best of luck with that, Professor, and travel safe. You'll be gone for how long?
About a little over 2 weeks.
All right.
3 weeks.
And with that, we will move on directly to our last segment before we end the podcast. We'd like to call this the rapid fire. So, just quick, fun questions just to lighten up the atmosphere. Are you ready, Professor? Okay. Ghilamara or Shillong?
Shillong.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Mountains or ocean?
Mountains.
Cats or dogs?
Well, that's cats.
Poetry or short stories?
Poetry.
Sora dialect of Khasi or Milim?
Milim. Absolutely.
Monolith Festival or the Shillong Lit Fest?
Monolith.
All-time favorite Khasi poet?
Sosotham would be, the poet that I have been influenced by. Yes.
Okay, your favorite Khasi word?
It's a new word that has been created. Maybe it's not Khasi, but it is something that is very spirited, which I've heard it being used by cab drivers, and it's called thias.
All right. If you weren't a folklorist, poet, storyteller, and teacher, what would you have been?
Probably historian, probably, because I did very well in history also.
All right. Help me complete the sentence. The future of folklore, particularly in the state of Meghalaya.
Is very encouraging.
A book you're currently reading.
I've just finished reading The Creation or The Invention of Tradition.
By whom?
By Eric Hobsbawm.
All right. Yeah. The one song that hooks you, the ultimate mood booster.
Probably Buffalo Soldier, probably. Yeah.
All right. Which team are you supporting the FIFA World Cup this year?
Argentina.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of FIFA, what's the best complimentary snack with beer?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
What's the best complimentary snack with beer?
At home or?
Well, it's your choice.
Yeah. Well, maybe fried pork.
Okay.
Yeah.
We want something greasy, don't we? Yeah. Professor, top two frontrunners most likely to win the upcoming MP election to the Shillong parliamentary constituency. Top two frontrunners.
That is tough. Yeah.
Come on, I'll give you top two. I'm not saying who will win. I'm saying top two.
Okay, you want names?
Yeah. Or maybe just the parties, political parties.
Okay.
So we have the NPP, we have the VPP, we have the
Yeah,
Congress, the
the
UDP, the BJP.
VPP and the NPP.
Okay.
Uh,
My final question to you is: would you ever consider entering politics?
no, absolutely not.
All right. Yes, then it is. Professor, we've spoken about folklore, we've spoken about poets, and of course, we have some books here in the studio as well. Would you like to run us through quickly on some of these books and when were they written? Just
Okay.
a gist of all of them.
Okay. I'll just talk about a few representative publications that I have, starting with Narratives of Northeast India, Series 1 and Series 2. These two books were published in 2002. A particular project, you know, provided me with the opportunity of traveling to different parts of Northeast, getting a team uh, from representing some of the communities of the Northeast, and together we put together this material. And this book is believed to be quite representative of the folk literature of Northeast India. So these two books are no longer available, I'm afraid, but I'm told that one of them is being has been prescribed as reading material for some of the colleges
Okay.
and universities in Northeast India. Another book which I spoke about is this one, Khasi Folk Songs and Tales. This was published by Sahitya Academy, as you know, as part of its Indian Literature and Tribal Languages. I'm quite happy with this book because I started work on this in 1999, and finally saw that it got published in 2006, and this book is also doing very well. Another book that I'd like to talk about is Essays in Khasi Folkloristics, which I published in 2016. This is a collection of essays, written a little bit more professionally, with the academic perspective very much in 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 view. And this book is also being prescribed for some colleges and universities. The last book which I published is Folklore Imprints in Northeast India. This is also a pan-Northeastern book, and this is also a collection of slightly academic mm, material gleaned from papers which I presented in different events, in different academic events. Yeah. So these books are readily available in the local.
Apart from the two you said, it won't be available.
The
two?
the two which I had mentioned earlier, I'm told that the stock is very limited.
Okay.
So it's in my. I'm contemplating doing a reprint of the books because I'm told that they're doing very well. Yeah.
Well, the rest are easily available online and bookstalls.
Folklore Imprints in Northeast India, the book which was published in 2017, was brought out by the Don Bosco Museum. So the copies are readily available there. There's also another book that I published with Dr. Danny Nengnong, that is on water. On water in Khasi Culture and Vision. That was published by the National Museum of Mankind in Bhopal. But that book is also, becoming. There are very few copies left of that book here also.
Okay.
So one might have to contact the National Museum of Mankind in Bhopal directly. But that actually represents the first collection done academically about the river systems, the water bodies of Khasi Jainta Hills. Yeah. So these are the books that are more representative. Although I've written
Yeah.
other books as well.
A very, very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for coming. And again, travel safe. Thank you so much.
It's been wonderful to be part of this show. Thank you.
Thank you.